The cold metal chair felt uncomfortable against Zethkar's thick hide. His 6 eyes moved around the white room, looking at every corner and shadow. The bright lights hurt his vision, but he tried not to show weakness. 3 humans sat across from him at a long table. They wore dark blue uniforms with strange symbols on their shoulders. Zethkar had fought these creatures for 3 long years. He had seen them bleed and die. He had watched them cry over their fallen friends. Yet sitting here in this quiet room, they scared him more than they ever had on the battlefield. The female human in the middle spoke first. Her voice was calm and steady. "State your name and rank for the record." "Zethkar of the 3rd Assault Legion. Former battle captain of the Hegemony Forces." His voice came out as a low growl. The translator device on his throat turned his words into human speech. "You are here to give testimony about war crimes committed during the Terran hegemony conflict." The woman continued. "Do you understand why you are here?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked together, nervous habit he could not control. "I understand. You want to know about the battles? About what we did to your people?" The human male on the left leaned forward. He had gray hair and tired eyes. "We want to know what happened. All of it. From the beginning." Zethkar looked down. At his clawed hands were still stained with old scars from the war. Some from human weapons. Others from his own troops, who had tried to flee rather than face the humans again. "Where should I start?" he asked. "Start with your first contact." "With human forces," the female said. "Tell us about New Montana." New Montana. The name still made Zethkar's skin crawl. He had been so confident back then, so sure that the humans would be easy prey. The hegemony had conquered 43 worlds across 17 different species. None had given them real trouble. The reports said humans were weak. Small creatures with soft skin and no natural weapons. Their technology was basic. Their worlds were poorly defended. "We thought you would surrender quickly," Zethkar began. "The war commander Vexel said we would be home in 1 solar cycle. Maybe 2 at most." He was wrong. The alien warrior shifted in his chair. His tail, thick as a human arm, curled around his feet. "Your species looked so fragile. We had fought the crystal beings of Nexus Prime. They could cut through our armor. With their limbs, we had battled the gas dwellers of the Vortex Nebula. They could survive in the vacuum of space. But humans, you had no claws, no natural armor, no poison, no telepathy. Nothing that made you dangerous. But you were wrong," the gray-haired human said. "Yes, very wrong." Zethkar's 6 eyes focused on a spot on the wall behind the humans. "We learned that the most dangerous weapon is not claws or armor. It is the mind. And human minds work differently than any other species we had met." The room fell silent for a moment. Zethkar could hear the quiet hum of the air recycling system. It reminded him of the sounds inside hegemony troop carriers, back when he still believed they were the strongest force in the galaxy. "Tell us about the landing," the female human prompted. Zethkar closed his eyes. Even now, 5 years after the war ended, he could still remember every detail of that first day. "We came down in the early morning, 3,000 of our best warriors. The plan was simple. Land near the main settlement, capture the leaders, force the rest to surrender. We had done it dozens of times before on other worlds." He opened his eyes and looked directly at the humans across from him. New Montana was supposed to be a mining colony. 50,000 humans digging metal from the ground. No military bases. No defense fleets. Just workers and their families. "Out." "Did you find instead?" the male human asked. Zethkar's mandibles clicked faster now. "We found that every human was a soldier. Even the smallest children. Even the oldest adults. They did not run when our ships appeared in the sky. They did not panic when we landed. They were ready for us." The alien paused and looked at his hands. "Again, your leader on that world was called Jake Morrison. He was listed in our files as a mining administrator, someone who managed work schedules and equipment. We expected him to beg for mercy when we found him, but he didn't," the female human said. "It was not a question. No. He stood in the middle of the town square with 200 other humans. All of them were armed, not with military weapons, but with mining tools, construction equipment, anything they could find. Morrison looked at our dropship's landing and turned to his people. He said something I will never forget. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. The humans waited, he said. Remember, we're not trying to win today. We're trying to make them pay for every step. Then he smiled. A human smile is a terrible thing when you are their enemy. The gray-haired human made a note on his tablet. What happened next? We advanced toward the town. Standard formation. Our armor was thick. Our weapons were powerful. A few hundred. Humans with mining tools should have been no threat at all. War Commander Vextel was so confident that he came down with the first wave to accept their surrender personally. Zethkar stood up from his chair and walked to the small window. Outside he could see the busy spaceport of Kepler Station. Ships from dozens of different species came and went, all of them following the peace treaty that the humans had written. After their victory, they let us get close. He continued with his back to the tribunal, maybe 50 meters from the edge of town. Then Morrison raised his hand. That was the signal. The alien turned back to face the humans. His expression was hard to read, but there was something like respect in his eyes. The ground under our feet exploded, not from bombs, from mining charges that they had buried during the night. Charges powerful enough to crack open mountains. 20 of our warriors died in the first few seconds. The rest of us were thrown to the ground, confused and hurt. But that was just the beginning, he added. While we were trying to get back to our feet, the humans attacked. Not like soldiers, like something wild and desperate. They used their mining equipment as weapons. Plasma cutters became swords. Drilling machines became spears. Heavy transport vehicles became battering rams. Zethkar sat back down. His voice became quieter. We had better weapons, better armor, better training. But the humans had something we did not understand. They were not fighting to live. We're fighting to make sure we could not kill others after we killed them. The female human leaned forward. What do you mean? A normal species fights to survive, and they are losing, they retreat. They save their strength for another day. Humans. Humans would throw away their lives to destroy one of us. A single human would attack 5 of our warriors, knowing he would die just to damage our weapons or delay our advance. Zethkar shook his head slowly. It made no sense to us. Why die for nothing? Why not live to fight another day? Could not understand it then. I think I understand it now, but it still frightens me. The room was quiet again. The humans at the table exchanged glances. How long did the battle last? The gray-haired male asked. 3 days. We had 3,000. Warriors? They had maybe 500 fighters. By the end, half of our force was dead or wounded. The humans lost almost everyone. But they had done what Morrison said they would do. They made us pay for every step. Zethkar looked down at his clawed hands one more time. That was just the beginning. He thought New Montana was unusual. A colony that got lucky. We learned later that every human settlement fought the same way. Every single one. The alien 6 eyes met the gaze of each human in turn. That was when we should have known. That was when we should have turned around and gone home. But we were too proud. Too sure of our strength. We decided to show the humans what real war looked like. He paused and his mandibles clicked one final time. We had no idea that we were the ones about to learn what war really meant. The human female across the table refilled her water cup. Her movements were slow and careful. Zethkar watched her with all 6 eyes. Even simple actions seemed different when humans did them, more purposeful somehow. Tell us about the next battle, she said, without looking up from her cup. Zethkar's tail twitched against the floor. After New Montana, War Commander Vextel was angry. Very angry. He said the humans had gotten lucky. That they had used tricks and lies to win. He wanted to show them real military power. The alien shifted his weight in the uncomfortable chair. We received new orders from the Hegemony High Command. They were sending more ships, more warriors. They wanted us to take a bigger human world, something important enough to make your species surrender completely. Which world? The gray-haired human asked. Riverside Colony. Population 800,000. It had factories that made ship parts for your space fleet. The High Command thought that if we destroyed those factories, your military would become weak. Zethkar closed his eyes and tried to push away the memories. But they came anyway, as clear as if they had happened yesterday. This time we brought 12,000 warriors. We had air support, heavy armor, long-range weapons. The war commander said we would crush the humans so completely that other colonies would surrender without fighting. The alien opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling. We were fools, complete fools. The female human made a note on her tablet. What happened when you arrived at Riverside? The orbital scan showed normal activity. Factories running, people going to work, children at schools. Everything looked peaceful. We thought the humans had not heard about New Montana yet, that they were unprepared. Zethkar's mandibles began their nervous clicking again. We landed outside the main city, standard formation. The plan was to surround the settlement and demand surrender. If they refused, we would destroy the factories and force them to give up. He paused and rubbed his forehead with one clawed hand. But when our ships touched down, something was wrong. The city was too quiet. No panic. No running crowds. Emergency broadcasts, begging us to spare them. The gray-haired human leaned forward. They were ready for you. More than ready. They had been preparing since the moment our ships appeared in their system. Every factory worker had become a soldier. Every school teacher had become a fighter. Even the children had jobs to do. Zethkar stood up again and walked to the window. Ships continued to arrive and depart from the spaceport. Normal life continued while he remembered the horror. The first sign of trouble came when we tried to contact their leaders. We broadcast surrender demands on all frequencies. No response. We sent messenger drones to the city center. They were shot down by hidden weapons. We tried to jam their communications. Nothing happened because they were not using electronic communication at all. He turned back to face the tribunal. They were using human children as messengers, boys and girls running between buildings with handwritten notes. When we shot at them, they would drop the message, and another child would pick it up and keep running. We could not stop their communications without killing every child in the city. The female human's expression did not change, but Zethkar saw her grip tighten on her pen. What did you do? War Commander Vextel ordered the advance. We moved toward the city in 3 columns. Each column had 4,000 warriors. We had heavy weapons that could destroy entire buildings. We had armor that could protect us from anything the humans might have. Zethkar sat back down heavily, or so we thought. The humans had spent 2 days turning their city into a trap. Every street was blocked with barriers made from factory equipment. Every building had been turned into a fortress. They had taken apart their own factories and turned the pieces into weapons. The alien's voice became quieter. But the worst part was not the traps or the weapons. It was the humans themselves. They fought like nothing we had ever seen before. He looked directly at each human in turn. On other worlds, when we attacked, the defenders would try to save their own lives. They would use cover. They would retreat. When things got bad, they would surrender when they were outnumbered. Normal behavior for any intelligent species, but not humans, the gray-haired male said. No, not humans. They did things that made no sense to us. A single human would charge at 20 of our warriors knowing he would die just to destroy one of our vehicles. Human females would carry explosives into groups of our soldiers and detonate them, killing themselves to hurt us. Zethkar's tail, curled around his feet, had a name for it in our language. Death-seeking madness. But it was not madness. It was strategy. Every human who died took some of us with them. Every sacrifice made it harder for us to advance. The alien paused and stared at his hands. I remember one human in particular, a factory worker named Pete Johnson. He was old by human standards, maybe 60 of your years. He should have been hiding with the other civilians. Instead, he was operating a machine that lifted heavy cargo. What did he do with it? The female human asked. He used it to fight our battle tanks, a cargo lifter against military armor. He knew he could not win. He knew he would die. But he fought anyway. He grabbed our tanks with the lifting claws and threw them into buildings. When we shot at him, he kept fighting until his machine caught fire. Zethkar shook his head. Before he died, he destroyed 3 of our tanks and blocked an entire street with wreckage. One old human with a work machine stopped an entire column of warriors for 2 hours. The room was quiet except for the sound of the humans typing notes on their tablets. "Tell us about the civilians," the gray-haired humans said. That was what confused us most. On other worlds, civilians stayed away from battles. They hid in shelters or fled to safe areas. They let their military handle the fighting. But human civilians did not act like civilians at all. Zethkar stood up and began pacing around the small room. "They fought alongside your soldiers. Doctors and teachers and shop owners, all carrying weapons and fighting like trained warriors. But more than that, they supported the fighters in ways we had never seen." "How?" the female asked. "They gave everything they had to help the fighters. Food, medicine, ammunition, anything that might be useful. But they also gave something else, something we did not understand at first." The alien stopped pacing and looked out the window again. "They gave hope. When one of your soldiers was wounded or tired or scared, the civilians would be there, telling him that his family was safe, that his sacrifice mattered. They would. Remember what he did." Zethkar turned back to face the tribunal. "In our culture, warriors fight for honor or profit or because they are ordered to. But your warriors were fighting for something different. They were fighting for the people standing next to them, for the children hiding in the shelters. For humans they had never met on worlds they had never seen. That made them dangerous," the gray-haired male observed. "More than dangerous. It made them unstoppable. We could kill their bodies, but we could not break their will. Every human we killed just made the others fight harder. Every building we destroyed just made them angrier." Zethkar sat back down and looked at the table. "The battle lasted for 8 days. We had better weapons and more soldiers, but the humans had something we could not match. They had a reason to fight that was stronger than fear of death." The alien's voice became almost a whisper. "By the end, we controlled most of the city. The factories were destroyed. Thousands of humans were dead, but we had lost half our force. Half of 12,000 warriors killed by factory workers and teachers and shop owners." He looked up at the humans across from him. War Commander Vexel declared victory. He said we had crushed human resistance and proven our strength. But I saw his hands shaking when he gave the victory speech. I saw the fear in his eyes. "Why was he afraid?" the female human asked. "Because we both knew the truth. We had not won anything. We had simply learned that fighting humans was different from fighting any other species. We did not fight to win battles. We fought to make sure that winning battles cost us everything we had." Zethkar's mandibles clicked one final time, and Riverside was just the second battle. We still had 3 years of war ahead of us. 3 years of learning just how far humans would go to protect what they loved. The alien looked down at his clawed hands again. The scars seemed deeper in the bright lights of the interrogation room. After Riverside, some of our warriors began asking questions, wondering if maybe we should find a different enemy to fight, an easier species to conquer. He met the gaze of each human in turn. But the High Command would not listen. They said we were the strongest military force in the galaxy, that no primitive species could stand against us. They ordered us to continue the war until every human world surrendered. Zethkar was quiet. For a long moment, when he spoke again, his voice was filled with something that might have been regret. They should have listened to the warriors who wanted to stop, because the humans were just getting started. The female human set down her tablet and looked directly at Zethkar. "Tell us about Luna Bays." Those 2 words made the alien's entire body go rigid. His 6 eyes widened and his breathing became faster. Even after all these years, the name still filled him with terror. "Luna Base," he repeated slowly. "The beginning of the end for the hegemony." Zethkar walked to the corner of the room and pressed his back against the wall. It was a defensive position, something he did without thinking when the memories became too strong. After Riverside, the High Command was furious. They said we were fighting wrong. We were being too careful with human lives. They wanted us to show the galaxy what happened to species that resisted the hegemony. The gray-haired human made a note. So they sent more forces. Not just more forces. everything we had. War Commander Vexthel was promoted to Supreme Battle Leader. He was given command of the largest invasion fleet in hegemony history. 3 million warriors from 12 different species, 500 capital ships, 1,000 support vessels. Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly. The target was your moon base, Luna Base. Intelligence reports said it was the center of human military command. The High Command believed that if we destroyed it, the rest of your species would surrender immediately. The alien slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. The humans at the table watched him, but did not speak. They seemed to understand that this part of the story was different, more painful. I was assigned to the advanced scouts. Our job was to capture human prisoners and gather information about Luna-based defenses. We thought it would be easy. Here, your moon had no atmosphere, no place for civilians to hide, just military targets that we could destroy from orbit. Zethkar stared at the floor between his feet. We captured a transport ship carrying human prisoners from earlier battles. 23 humans who had been taken during raids on outer colonies. They were being moved to a prisoner exchange point. What did you learn from them? The female human asked. Everything and nothing, Zethkar replied. They told us about Luna Base freely, about the command centers and weapons platforms and defensive systems. They answered every question we asked, but the information they gave us was wrong. Not lies, exactly, but not the whole truth either. The alien looked up at the tribunal. One of the prisoners was a pilot named Danny Martinez, young male, maybe 25 of your years. He had been shot down during the battle for Kepler Station. We expected him to be afraid, broken, ready to betray his own species to save his life. But he wasn't, the gray-haired human said. No, he was excited, happy even. He kept talking about how we were making a mistake, how we should turn around and go home while we still could. When we asked him why, he just smiled and said we would find out soon enough. Zethkar pulled his knees up to his chest, a position that looked strange for such a large, dangerous-looking creature. Another prisoner was a female named Susan Blake. She was a communications officer from a destroyed human outpost. She had been captured after fighting for 3 days with a broken arm and no ammunition. We thought she would be the most likely to give us useful information. What did she tell you? The female human asked. She told us that General Ryan Cooper was waiting for us at Luna Base, that he had prepared something special for the hegemony fleet. When we demanded details, she said we would understand when we saw it. Then she laughed. A human laugh is a terrible sound when you are about to attack their stronghold. The alien's voice became quieter. All the prisoners said the same thing, that we were walking into a trap, that Luna Base was not what it appeared to be. But they would not explain what they meant. They just smiled and waited. Zethkar stood up slowly and walked back to his chair. War Commander Vexthel interrogated the prisoners himself. He used truth drugs and mind scanners. Everything they said checked out. Luna Base was a military installation with standard defenses. Nothing special. Nothing we had not seen before. But you had a feeling something was wrong, the gray-haired human observed. Yes. The prisoners were too calm, too confident. They acted like humans who knew a secret that would save them and destroy us. But our intelligence scans showed nothing unusual about Luna Base. Just another military target. The alien sat down and gripped the arms of his chair with his clawed hands. The assault began at dawn, Earth time. 3 million warriors attacking from every direction. We had enough firepower to crack a moon in half. The human defenses looked pathetic compared to our fleet. Zethkar's eyes focused on something far away. Luna Base had maybe 50,000 defenders. They had orbital platforms and missile batteries, but nothing that should have stopped us. The first wave of our attack went exactly as planned. We broke through their outer defenses and began landing troops on the surface. What went wrong? The female human asked. Nothing went wrong. That was the problem. Everything was going too well. The humans were fighting hard, but they were not fighting like humans. They were retreating when they should have stood and died. They were abandoning positions that they should have defended to the last soldier. The alien's mandibles clicked nervously. I was with the 5th landing wave. By the time we reached the surface, our forces controlled half the base. Human resistance was collapsing everywhere. War Commander Vextel was already planning his victory celebration. Zethkar looked directly at the humans across from him. That was when General Ryan Cooper sent us a message. A video transmission broadcast to every ship in our fleet. Cooper was standing in what looked like a command center. Behind him were dozens of human officers working at control stations. He looked calm, professional, like a commander who was winning, not losing. The alien's voice became barely a whisper. He said to the hegemony fleet, "Thank you for bringing your entire military force to one location. It will make this much easier." Then he smiled. The same smile we had seen on the prisoners. The smile of humans who knew something we did not. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. The humans at the table waited patiently. Cooper raised his hand and said one word. "Execute." Then the transmission ended. "What happened next?" the gray-haired human asked. "For 10 seconds, nothing. Our forces continued advancing. Our ships continued their bombardment. Everything seemed normal. Then the trap was sprung. Alien's entire body began to shake slightly. The first thing we noticed was that the stars were moving. Not the stars themselves, but objects passing in front of them. Hundreds of objects, thousands, all moving toward our fleet from every direction. "Asteroids," the female human said. It was not a question. Asteroids with engines attached to them. Guided missiles the size of mountains. Your species had been preparing for months, moving rocks from the asteroid belt and positioning them around Luna Base. When Cooper gave the signal, they all began moving toward us at once. Zethkar's voice cracked, but that was not the worst part. While we were watching the asteroid bombardment begin, Luna Base itself started to change. The surface installations we had been attacking were fake. Decoys made to look like real military targets. The real base was underground. "How far underground?" the gray-haired human asked. "Deep enough that our weapons could not reach it." The humans had been digging for years, building a fortress inside the moon itself. When the real defenses came online, they had weapons we had never seen before. Particle beams that could slice through our capital ships like they were made of paper. The alien looked down at his hands again. In 20 minutes, we lost half our fleet. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds, destroyed by rocks with engines and weapons we did not know existed. The survivors tried to retreat, but the asteroid field made escape impossible. The Zethkar's mandibles clicked faster and faster. War Commander Vextel ordered all remaining forces to land on Luna Base and capture it by ground assault. Said it was the only way to stop the bombardment. 3 million warriors charging into underground tunnels against an enemy that had been preparing for exactly this moment. "How many survived?" the female human asked quietly. "From my unit." 12 out of 800? From the entire invasion force? Maybe 300,000? The rest died in those tunnels or were destroyed by the asteroid bombardment. The greatest military force in hegemony history, reduced to a broken remnant in 6 hours. The alien was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with something between respect and terror. That was when we understood what the prisoners had been trying to tell us. Humans do not just fight battles. You fight wars. You think months and years ahead. You turn your defeats into traps and your weaknesses into weapons. Zethkar looked up at the tribunal one final time. Luna Base was not a battle we lost. It was a lesson in what humans are capable of when they have time to plan. The silence in the room stretched for a long time. Zethkar sat hunched in his chair, staring at nothing. His 6 eyes moved constantly, as if watching invisible enemies. The humans at the table waited patiently. They had learned that pushing the alien to speak would only make him stop talking completely. Finally, the female human spoke in a soft voice. "What happened after Luna Base?" Zethkar's head snapped up. For a moment, he looked confused, as if he had forgotten where he was. Then his eyes focused on the tribunal, and he straightened in his chair. After Luna Base, everything changed. The humans stopped defending. They started hunting. The alien's tail curled and uncurled nervously. We thought the war was over. Our main fleet was destroyed. Most of our warriors were dead. The few ships that escaped Luna Base limped back to hegemony space, broken and barely functional. We expected the humans to accept our surrender and negotiate a peace treaty. But they didn't. The gray-haired humans said, "No, They followed us. Home, Zethkar stood up and began pacing again. It seemed to help him think, or maybe it helped him deal with the fear that the memories brought back. 3 weeks after Luna Base, human ships appeared in the Korath system. Not many ships. Maybe 20 vessels. But they were different from the defensive fleets we had fought before. These ships were built for one purpose: to attack and destroy everything in their path. The aliens stopped pacing and looked out the window. The Korath system was a supply depot. Thousands of ships carrying food and ammunition and medical supplies. For hegemony forces, it was defended by the home fleet of the Zephyrian Empire. 200 warships crewed by some of the best warriors in the galaxy. What happened? Female human asked. The human fleet commander sent a message to the Zephyrian admiral. Her name was Lisa Chen. I learned that later from the surrender broadcasts. Offered terms to every ship in the system. Lay down your weapons immediately and you will be spared, continue fighting, and receive no mercy. Zethkar's mandibles clicked slowly. The Zephyrian admiral laughed at the message. 20 human ships against 200 alien warships? He thought it was a joke. He ordered his fleet to attack and destroy the humans quickly. The alien sat back down heavily. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, every Zephyrian ship was either destroyed or surrendering. The humans had not lost a single vessel. How was that possible? The gray-haired human asked. Because the humans had learned from every battle we fought. They knew our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses. But more than that, they had built new ships designed specifically to fight us. Faster ships, stronger ships. Ships with weapons that could punch through our best armor like it was made of thin metal. Zethkar's voice became quieter, but the technology was not what made them so terrifying. It was how they fought. The humans did not waste time with honor or fair play. They attacked the weakest ships first, destroying them quickly to spread panic through our fleets. They used tricks and traps that no honorable warrior would consider.
Oh yeah, Lise?
The alien looked directly at the tribunal. They kept their promise about mercy. Every ship that surrendered immediately was spared. Every ship that fought back was destroyed completely with no survivors. Word spread quickly through the hegemony fleets. Surrender to humans or die. There was no middle choice. Tell us about the ground battles, the female human said. Zethkar's entire body shuddered. The ground battles were worse than the space. Fights, much worse. He stood up again and walked to the corner of the room. The humans landed troops on Keth Prime, the fortress world of the hegemony. It was supposed to be impossible to capture. 50,000 of our best warriors defended tunnels and bunkers that had been built over centuries. How many humans attacked? The gray-haired human asked. 800. 800 human marines against 50,000 defenders on our strongest world. The room fell silent. Even the humans at the table seemed shocked by the numbers. Their leader was called Captain Bill Turner. I saw him once, during the final assault on the central fortress. He was not a large human. Not particularly strong, but when he spoke, his soldiers listened. When he pointed at a target, they attacked without question. Zethkar's voice became barely a whisper. Turner gave his troops simple orders. Take the fortress. Show no mercy to anyone who fights back. Protect any civilian who surrenders. The humans followed those orders exactly. The alien pressed his. Back against the wall, they did not fight like any military force we had ever seen. They moved through our defenses like water flowing around rocks. When we blocked one path, they found 3 others. When we destroyed one of their units, 2 more appeared behind us. How long did the siege last? The female human asked. 6 days. 6 days for 800 humans to destroy 50,000 defenders and capture the strongest fortress in hegemony space. By the end, our warriors were throwing down their weapons and begging to surrender rather than face the humans in combat. Zethkar slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor again. But the strangest thing was not how they fought, it was how they treated prisoners and civilians. What do you mean? The gray-haired human asked. During the battle, I was wounded by shrapnel from one of our own exploding weapons. I was bleeding and could not move. I expected to die slowly in that tunnel. Instead, a human medic found me. Ah! Alien looked up at the tribunal with confusion still clear in his eyes. Her name was Patricia Wells. She was a doctor, not a soldier. But she was there in the middle of the battle, treating wounded fighters from both sides. She stopped the bleeding in my leg and gave me medicine for the pain. She helped you, even though you were an enemy, a female human asked. Yes, and when I asked her why, she said something I still do not understand. She said, because you are hurt, and I am a doctor. Oh, that is all that matters right now. Then, she moved on to help other wounded soldiers, human and alien alike. Zethkar. Mandibles clicked slowly. This happened everywhere the humans fought. In the middle of the most vicious battles, their medical teams would risk their lives to save wounded enemies. It made no sense to us. Why help people who are trying to kill you? The alien pulled his knees up to his chest again. But it had an effect on our troops. You know that the enemy will heal your wounds if you are hurt. It becomes harder to see them as monsters. When you know they will spare your life if you surrender, fighting to the death seems foolish. The psychological warfare the gray-haired human observed. Exactly, but I do not think the humans planned it that way. I think they were just being themselves, showing mercy, because that is what humans do, even to their enemies, even in the middle of a war. Zethkar was quiet for a moment. The worst part was watching our own troops lose the will to fight. Not because they were cowards, because they began to believe that maybe the humans were not the evil invaders that hegemony propaganda said they were. The alien looked up at the humans across from him. When Turner's forces reached the Central Command bunker, they found War Commander Vextel hiding behind a force field with his personal guard. Turner could have blasted through the barrier and killed everyone inside. Instead, he offered surrender terms. What were the terms? The female human asked. Complete surrender of all hegemony forces in the system. Safe passage for any warrior who laid down arms. War crimes trials for anyone who had committed atrocities against civilians. Fair treatment for all prisoners. Zethkar's voice became almost inaudible. Vextel accepted. The greatest war commander in hegemony history surrendered to a human captain with 800 Marines. But not because he had to. Because the alternative was watching his soldiers die for nothing. The alien stood up slowly and walked back to his chair. After Keth Prime fell, resistance collapsed across the entire hegemony. Whole fleets surrendered without firing a shot. Planetary governors sent messages offering to switch sides. Species that had been part of the hegemony for centuries began declaring independence and asking for human protection. How did the war end? The gray-haired human asked. With a broadcast from the hegemony high command. Total and unconditional surrender. All military forces ordered to lay down arms immediately. All occupied worlds to be returned to their original governments. Full reparations to be paid to every species the hegemony had conquered. Zethkar sat down and looked at his hands. The broadcast lasted 3 minutes. 3 minutes to end a war that was supposed to make the hegemony rulers of the galaxy. Instead, it made us refugees and war criminals. The alien's 6 eyes focused on each human in turn. But even then, even after we had invaded your worlds and killed your people, you showed mercy. You could have destroyed every hegemony world, could have enslaved us like we had enslaved others. Instead, you offered us a chance to rebuild, to learn, to become better than we were. Zethkar's mandibles clicked one final time. That was when I understood the most frightening thing about humans. You do not fight wars to destroy your enemies. You fight wars to turn your enemies into friends, and somehow impossibly it works. The female human closed her tablet and set it on the table. The room felt different now, quieter, as if the weight of all the stories Zethkar told was pressing down on everyone inside. Yes. Tell us about the peace negotiations, she said. Zethkar looked at his clawed hands for a long moment. They were shaking slightly. Even after all these years, talking about the end of the war still affected him deeply. The negotiations were held on this station, Kepler Station, neutral ground that belonged to neither side. I was there as a witness for the hegemony surrender delegation. My job was to confirm the details of battles and casualties. The alien's 6 eyes moved around the room. I expected the humans to be angry, demanding, ready to punish us for starting a war that killed millions of people on both sides. Instead, their chief negotiator was calm and polite. His name was Robert Evans. He treated us like honored guests instead of defeated enemies. What were the human demands? The gray-haired human asked. That was what shocked us most. They were not demands. They were offers. The humans offered to help us rebuild our military into a peacekeeping force. They offered to share technology that would improve life on our worlds. They offered to establish trade agreements that would make our economy stronger. Zethkar stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, alien and human ships worked side by side, loading and unloading cargo. The sight still amazed him after all these years. Evans explained that the humans had studied our history. They knew that the hegemony had formed because smaller species were afraid of being conquered by stronger neighbors. The constant wars and invasions came from fear, not evil. So instead of punishing us, they wanted to remove the fear. The alien turned back to face the tribunal. The peace treaty created something new, a galactic confederation where every species would be protected by mutual defense agreements. No more strong species conquering weak ones. No more wars over resources or territory. Everyone working together for common goals. How did the other alien species react? The female human asked. Most were confused at first. The idea of cooperation instead of conquest was foreign to us. We had always believed that the strong should rule the weak, that taking what you wanted by force was natural law. The humans showed us a different way. Zethkar sat back down in his chair. But some species adapted quickly. The Crystalline Collective was the first to sign mutual defense treaties with Earth. They said that human engineering combined with their mineral processing could benefit both civilizations. Within a year, they were building joint research stations. Aliens' mandibles clicked slowly. I was assigned to work with the human reconstruction teams on former hegemony worlds. My job was to help establish new governments and train local peacekeeping forces. It was ... educational. How so? The gray-haired human asked. Because I got to see how humans work when they are not fighting a war. Their approach to everything was different from what we expected. They did not come as conquerors or rulers. They came as teachers and helpers. Zethkar's voice became thoughtful. On Zarian Prime, the human team was led by a civilian administrator named Carol Martinez. Her job was to help the local population establish a democratic government. She spent months just listening to different groups explain their needs and concerns. That must have been frustrating for her, the female human observed. I thought so too at first. I suggested that she simply choose the strongest faction and put them in charge. That was how the hegemony had always done things, quick and efficient. But Martinez explained that the goal was not efficiency. The goal was making sure everyone had a voice in their own government. The alien shook his head slowly. It took almost a year to establish the new government on Zarian Prime, a year of meetings and debates and compromises. But when it was finished, every major group on the planet supported the result. There were no rebellions, no underground resistance movements, no need for occupation forces to keep the peace. Zethkar looked directly at each human in turn. That was when I began to understand something important about your species. You do not just win wars, you win the peace that comes after wars. You turn enemies into allies, not through force, but through patience and respect. The room was quiet for a moment. The alien seemed to be gathering his thoughts for something important. During my time working with the reconstruction teams, learned about human history, about your own wars and conflicts. I learned that your species had fought each other for thousands of years before you went to the stars. What did you think about that? The gray-haired human asked. At first it confused me. How could a species that fought so well together have spent so much time fighting each other? But then I realized that was exactly why you were so good at ending wars. You would learn from your own mistakes. His voice became stronger, more confident. Humans understand something that other species do not. That winning a war is easy compared to building a lasting peace. Any species can destroy their enemies. Only wise species can turn their enemies into friends. The alien stood up and walked around the room slowly. I saw this principle applied everywhere the humans worked. On Vortex Station, they helped former hegemony slave species establish their own governments. On the mining worlds of the Outer Rim, they taught sustainable resource extraction techniques. On military worlds, they showed how armies could be used for disaster relief instead of conquest. But there must have been resistance, the female human said. Not everyone would have welcomed these changes. You're right. Some species refused to cooperate. Some individual leaders tried to restart the old ways of conquest and domination, but the human response to resistance was always the same. Firm, but fair. Strong, but not cruel. Zethkar stopped walking and faced the tribunal directly. I witnessed one such incident on Kalar 7. A military commander named General Vexfer attempted to overthrow the new democratic government and restore military rule. He had support from about 30% of the local population. What did the humans do? The gray-haired human asked. They sent a single negotiator, a woman named Helen Brooks who specialized in conflict resolution. She met with General Vexfer and his supporters, not to threaten them or demand surrender, to listen to their concerns and find solutions. The alien's mandibles clicked with what might have been approval. It turned out that Vexfer was not trying to restart a war. He was afraid that democracy would be too weak to protect his people from outside threats. Brooks spent 3 weeks working with him to design a government structure that was both democratic and capable of strong defense when needed. Did it work? Female human asked. Perfectly. Vexfer became the elected defense minister of the new government. His former rebels became the core of a professional military that served the people instead of ruling them. Today, Kalar 7 is one of the most stable and prosperous worlds in the Confederation. Zethka returned to his chair and sat down carefully. That experience taught me the most important lesson about humans. You do not see enemies as people to be destroyed. You see them as problems to be solved. You keep working on the problem until you find a solution that works for everyone. Ilian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost sad. The war changed me. Before I fought humans, I thought strength meant the ability to destroy your enemies. I thought victory meant making others fear you. I thought peace meant the absence of resistance to your rule. Now, the gray-haired human asked. I know that real strength means the ability to protect others. Real victory means making enemies into friends. Real peace means everyone working together for common goals. Zethkar looked down at his hands one final time. The scars were still there, but they seemed different somehow. Less like marks of shame and more like reminders of lessons learned. The humans won the war not because they were the strongest fighters. They won because they understood what victory should look like. They fought not to destroy the hegemony, but to transform it into something better. The alien raised his 6 eyes to meet the gaze of the tribunal. That is why I'm here. Not just to confess war crimes or provide testimony about battles. I am here to warn other species about what happens when you fight humans. What warning? The female human asked. That if you fight humans, you will lose. Not just the war. Will lose your old way of thinking about war itself. You'll be forced to become better than you were before. And for some species, for some individuals, that transformation is more terrifying than death. Zethkar stood up slowly. His time was almost finished. Humans do not just defeat their enemies. They redeem them. They take the worst aspects of a species and help them become the best they can be. That is the most frightening and wonderful thing about your kind. The alien looked out the window one last time. Ships continued their peaceful work, carrying trade goods and passengers between worlds that had once been enemies. The war has been over for 5 years. In that time, I have seen former hegemony worlds become more prosperous and peaceful than they ever were under our rule. I have seen species that fought each other for centuries, working side by side on joint projects. I have seen the galaxy become a better place because humans were willing to fight for it.